I'm meeting with Mark Hales, an attorney and mediator. And before we go any further, would you give those who would like to contact you if they decide they'd like to utilize your services as a mediator, give them your contact information, please?
Sure, you can contact me at my firm, which is Jolly & Jolly, 801-495-1442, or email me at mark@jollyandjolly.com.
Great. And Jolly is spelled Jolley, is that
Right,
correct?
yes, and the and is spelled A-N-D.
Okay, good. Now, first of all, let me ask you a couple of questions about what you do as an attorney. What do you practice in? What areas?
I primarily focus on domestic issues, divorce, custody, child support, alimony.
All right.
type of work.
So when you mediate, do you mediate in areas other than in domestic relations, or even domestic relations at all for that matter? I don't want to presume anything.
I primarily mediate in divorce work as well, but I will mediate anything that comes before me. So.
All right. What do you think about mediation in the domestic relations, divorce, child custody realm?
I think mediation is great. I think mediation is, people get far better results and a little happier with their results when they do mediate. My philosophy, or I put on my paperwork, is out of the courts and into your hands. Because it's in mediation where the two of you can take away the verses of a litigation and put an and. The two of the mom and dad, the husband and wife, can get together and come up with a plan for them that will be more creative and more unique to their life, and not having to waste time in litigation.
Couldn't you say that, though, about anybody with any dispute? You know what I'm saying? I mean, there are some times when I may not want to get along with somebody else. That may be the reason for the dispute. Does mediation do any good in those situations? And if so, how does it come about?
Well, you're saying that people want to fight just to fight.
Or just because they feel as though there's a dispute that isn't easily negotiated or compromised.
No, sometimes people don't have enough information and they can't settle it, or they're not emotionally ready to settle, or honestly, some disputes need a third party to make a decision, and that's fine. That's what the courts are for. The judge isn't going to, he's going to give you the time and effort and give you a decision, and that's what you can do. So there's nothing wrong and nothing fearful about going to court, but sometimes you take the gamble by going to court compared to making a decision yourself.
Let me give you a common example of, and that's an excellent response, not because I like it, but because it makes sense and it's well worded. But let me give you an example of something that's irreconcilable, at least on its face. One parent says, I want sole custody of the kids. The other parent says, no, I want sole. Or the other parent says, no, I would like to do some kind of a joint arrangement. But it's got to be one or the other. There's a difference where if I want the whole cake and you want the whole cake, we can understand that, well, if I get half the cake, I'm disappointed, but I know I at least got half the cake, and maybe if it matters to me, I know that you didn't get any more than half too. But children can't be so easily divided. What can, if anything, in your opinion, one way or the other, what can mediation do for people in those situations? And if the answer is not much, they probably ought to go to court, that's fine with me. But if you see other options, that's one thing I'd like people watching this to know, is kind of how you see that unfold.
Well, it's true. We're not King Solomon and can't divide the baby and say go. But sometimes, having that discussion about really, dividing the baby kind of sees people's real intent. But when both parties are so adverse as to what to do, sometimes they may not hate each other, but one is moving to Florida and one's moving to Hawaii, and the kids have to go someplace. And if you can't reach an agreement because literally you can't divide the child, well then there's sometimes people need more information.
Sure.
And so they get experts to come in and provide input so the parties can say, you know what, this child really does need this aspect in their life, and as a parent I'll support that and let that child go. But it's hard because people are more attached sometimes emotionally to these kids than they're not really thinking the best interest of thinking of themselves.
I actually like that scenario. Let's talk about that, where it's, there may not be between the parents actual animosity, but it's like, I'm moving to another state and no one questions my motives for that. I have to move, but we will be hundreds of miles apart. We clearly cannot share joint custody.
No.
And so what would you say to someone who in his or her mind is, I don't deserve this. I'm not moving. I'm willing to share, but we can't. Therefore, I didn't do anything wrong. And again, we could use this same thing with any issue, but this is
Right.
one that comes up. What can a mediator do to help resolve a situation? It's like, look, I didn't move. I shouldn't have to lose my kids over this. Here's the other thing. I'm just as good a parent as my spouse. I'm not going to tell anybody I'm better to win this argument. I have foibles and faults. I have good characteristics. So does my spouse. But what can mediation do?
I guess mediation is, people sometimes think the mediator's there to make a decision or to really persuade one or the other to give up.
An excellent point. I think there's plenty of people that think that very thing.
And that's really not their role. I mean, sometimes when attorneys and mediator, they kind of can add a third voice to the other attorney saying, this is kind of what we see. I can see that that's the attorney's, providing you good advice, or this attorney's kind of way off. But the problem is when everybody is a good parent and there's nothing wrong, mediation is difficult because there's only two options. One parent has to give up, and so you have to go through different scenarios, or maybe we come up with more creative ways to have more time or make things work. And it's just seeing if one or the two parents decide that, it's not worth their time and effort to litigate. And that's hard but the thing is, you have to tell them, unfortunately, it's not fair. Anytime the child is living in a home without their mom and dad in that same house, it's not fair. So people always come in and complain as that it's not fair. Unfortunately, it's not, but that's reality. People make decisions to end a marriage and to move away and to take a child. It's not fair, and all we can do is try to come up with ways to maximize the time that is available so that both parties can be involved in life. And hopefully parties can maintain the friendliness even if they do move away and a child is taken away and mom or dad sees a child much less, that child's still happy and healthy and involved in both parents' lives.
There are different ways mediators will approach a mediation. Some people feel that they need to take a almost purely hands-off approach, and they're only there to make sure the parties don't come over the table at each other and start fighting. There's others that feel they can encourage people to mediate, but need to be neutral as to any judgments or any kind of conclusions. There are other mediators that feel like, if they're retired judges or lawyers themselves, feel as though they can make suggestions, saying, take it for what it's worth, know that I'm not choosing sides, but an idea comes to mind, or let me just bounce this off you whether I like the idea or not. I've heard of this particular problem solved at least 3 ways. Let me tell you what they are, in case you're not aware of an idea of your own. Then there's others that will bring in psychologists and financial planners. Where do you fall in that? And there's other ways too, but where do you fall in there? Are you one of those, are you a hands-off? Are you more of a, I want to get involved and give my opinions, not because I'm making a decision, as you pointed out, but just because I'd like people to consider that if it helps them reach a decision?
I can play any role in that. If both parties have attorneys that are good and are really helpful, then I don't have to be as aggressive to get things done. But as an attorney, it's hard to take that hat off and not be providing some suggestions or things that could work. Because I've represented men, I've represented women, I'm a guardian, I represent kids. We see things that work and see things that don't work. And so if we can provide some options the parties can look at, just thrown out there, then I think that's helpful. As an attorney who's a mediator, they're kind of wanting that aspect. They want that advice from an attorney, even though we're giving it neutrally. I think that's okay because you're not being biased towards one side or the other.
And not only that, it's in my opinion, people can differ on that, but it's kind of a more bang for the buck. It's a second opinion. Again, you're not advising anybody, but you can give an opinion saying, I've seen that attempted in other cases and it didn't work well in the ones I've seen. Or, that may be more trouble than it's worth. I see why you find this attractive. I've tried it myself, and and what you didn't know, and I do things like that.
It's true. Or he's saying, these are things that I've seen. Let's try to avoid it and do it this way, so that you can avoid the same problems we've seen in the past. So that we're not going to throw in problems that are going to create problems in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And so we need to. I think that's our role, is to make sure that they can avoid problems. And so if we can, hey, this is what I've seen, and let's avoid that, then I think it's a good thing.
In wrapping up, you can go online and read kind of the general, obvious stuff about preparing for mediation, keep an open mind, and things like that. So knowing that that's good advice, but we hear it all the time, is there anything that you see that people don't normally or automatically think of that makes for preparing for and participating in mediation better, whether it be faster or less expensive or more amicable? What are some things that you wish people would do in preparing for and going to mediation?
That's a good question. I mean, people do need to have, plan A, plan B, plan C, and so they can't come into mediation saying, I'm only going to take my option and nothing else, because that's not mediation. So they have to be prepared on a gamut of things that they can be satisfied with. Sometimes I tell people, okay, you have 7 issues, take 100 points and divide it up among everything, so that we know if you're getting, when you total up, it's still 65 points. Well, that's still a pretty good deal. Even though you didn't get the number 1 issue, you're still getting under your points. Or find ways to just, unfortunately, you said you want to avoid having an open mind, but you got to come in and not be my way or no way, because that's going to get nothing.
In fact, as you say that, it truly, there really are more than one way to skin a cat. The cat is still skinned, and it's a catfish, by the way, folks, if you ever wonder what. If your goal is to skin that catfish, that can be done more than one way. Now, you may not like the second option, but if your goal was to skin the catfish, so what? And so it is important. I agree with you that you might say, I know what I want, and there's one way to get it, but that's not necessarily true. And when you think about options, suddenly you'll discover things and ways that you may not have realized existed.
Right. Mediation is problematic is when either the attorney or the client is too ignorant or arrogant to see past their point of view. And sometimes people don't understand the law, and so they need information, or they think they know the law. But again, there's so many ways to divide people's stuff, or most importantly, to co-parent and have co-parenting schedules that work for that you don't have to just follow one path, because every kid's different, every family's different, and so come up with an open mind, and you can tend to get things resolved. And I don't mind, sometimes people need an hour to vent and scream and yell and curse. That's fine, let it out. Let this. Sometimes people never go to court, and mediation is the day for the people to be heard. And so the mediator has to take it, and they have to listen to the people vent. And sometimes I've had mediators get mad when we're contesting their position, both factual and legally, and they're like, don't get mad at me, I'm the messenger. Well, yes, you're the messenger, but when they're not in the room, you have to take the brunt, and that's fine. Take it, filter it out, and then reflect it back when you go back in, so that you're getting towards the middle.
And I that's a great point, because when people vent, there's venting and then there's just gratuitous ranting and raving, but one of the nice things about being able to vent for a reasonable period of time is it clears your head.
Yeah.
If it's done right. You can get so wrapped up in it, but it clears your head, and then you can say, all right, it's good to get that off my chest. Now I'm ready to focus on discussing the issues and figuring out a solution.
It's true. People just need the chance to vent their time. I'm also a small claims judge, and I let people spend their time to vent because they need to be heard, and then they can accept a judgment.
Because they perceive that you actually understand them.
And if I take that consideration in, listen, and I heard this point of view, and taking that into consideration and this consideration, I'm ruling this way, they tend to accept the judgments better when they can hear the judge reflecting back what they heard.
Well,
and same with the mediator. So,
Well, then you present the complete package. So you're not only an advocate in your role as a lawyer, so you know how that works. You're a mediator, so you can understand how two people to a dispute will take different sides and how they might view it. And then you're also been on the bench itself, adjudicating stuff. So you really are in a unique position to tell people, I can see all the different merits and detriments to the various ways we can solve a problem.
yeah, it's helpful to have sometimes, even though I judge as a small claims judge, doesn't really tie into divorce aspects, but it does say everything kind of works itself out, and so yeah, it's helpful to be able to come from those perspectives.
I judge small claims too, and let me ask you if you felt this way or some other way. It was interesting to see, I didn't realize how difficult it is to solve some of these problems. I have to make a decision. I'm the judge. I must choose a winner or a loser. And sometimes it can be extraordinarily hard. And that's good to know as a mediator, because then you can tell them, it's like, look, I can see merits to both sides. Unfortunately, this isn't going to be an easy, you're right and you should win on 7 of the 10 points, and you're right on, it may not even be that easy.
No case is easy because ones don't marry tens. And so one parent isn't this perfect parent and the other parent a dirtbag. And if that's the scenario, it's easy to know where the kids are going to go, what's going to happen, because someone's in jail and someone's in heaven, and someone's, an angel. I mean, it's just, that's not the case. People deal with common struggles, and so nobody's just going to expect to have a slam dunk. But that means, as a judge, it's harder you have to make that decision. And so the mediator, it's good to know that there's truth on both sides, and you have to get them to the middle, and not just, it's an easy case.
Mark, you've brought some perspectives that other people have not, and I really appreciate that, because there are many commonalities between the various mediators, because all good mediators will do certain things the same. But I appreciate some of the things that you've talked about others have not mentioned, because people watching more than one of these videos are going to be richer for the experience. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Eric.
Before we go, would you please give them your name and contact information for those that would want to hire you for the purpose of mediating their dispute?
Sure. Again, my name is Mark Hales. You can reach me at 801-495-1442 or email me at mark@jollyandjolly.com.
And we'll have the same information posted next to his name when you click on the link for this video as well. We appreciate it.
Thanks, sir.